Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. Today we're continuing again with chapter 22, Al-Hajj. And we stopped yesterday at verse 66. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through this surah and through the past few ayats, He is again confirming and He's acknowledging that fact that He is the one who created everything, the one who created the human being, the one who will cause the human being to die. I mean, people die for different reasons, but everything has a reason behind it. Somebody get hit by a car, somebody get a heart attack, somebody, so many different things, different diseases, different viruses, different so on and so forth. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have put all these reasons in order for the outcome to happen. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, He originated everything, and He did everything, and He made everything. And at the end of the day, and instead of the human being go and find refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, depend on Him, asking Him, no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in the last ayah that the human being is kafur, means what? Ungrateful. He doesn't follow, he doesn't obey, he doesn't use what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the right manners, in the right way He asked him to do. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's come and talking about the people. And He said, لِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ, for every nation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made their own code, their own rituals, their own laws for every nation. So we have the Jews, we have Christians, we have Muslims, and before those nations there was certain different groups of prophets being sent, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's saying that for all of those there's different rituals, different ways how you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we see that these rules or these laws depends on the time, depends on the capabilities, depends on the abilities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows what really fit or what really agrees with the time of each of those periods. For example, at the time of the Jews, they had their way of worship, the way of prayer, the way of doing the ritual is different. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that all of these rituals is to establish one thing, the monotheism, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's only one God. There's only one God worthy of worship. That's it. And to protect, to put the shield, as we talked about before, that the importance of these rituals, importance of the prayers, importance of the charity, importance of the fasting, importance of that, all of those is to do what? At-taqwa, God consciousness, God fear, so the person doesn't commit sin. The person doesn't become disobedient. The person does not become a toy in the hand of the devil. And that's what we see. Like all what the problems are we facing as on an individual level, on a family level, on a community level, on a city level, on a nation level, on a state level, everything on a worldly level is because of the person is given is not doing his rituals, he's not doing these what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him to do. And if he's doing them, he's not taking those seriously and building his God fearing. Because if you build your God fearing, you will think 100 times before you take a penny from somebody. One of the biggest problem we have, poor people, and we have people who are suffering, is the rich, the head of the states. They're corrupted. They want to enrich themselves. So they do everything in their ability where they leave the masses hungry, they leave the masses with few dollars, they cannot make their living, and they enrich themselves. That's why, if in, in a lot of nations, number one reason people want to go to the political career or have a political career is to enrich himself. Basically, he has the connections. He can do this. He can do that. So the lack of performing these rituals, number one. And if they're performing it superficially, not from internal. These rituals is not affecting them, because if they're affecting them from inside, it will reflect on the outside, on how they treat others, and how they become not a selfish guy, and how they treat their family members, and how they treat their neighbors, and how they treat their co-workers, and how they treat their fellow students. Everything around you will become a reflection for your religion. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, throughout the history of the mankind, He have different assignments. You can say assignments. But at the end of the day, these assignments have one reason or one outcome, is to protect the individual from the effect of the devil and the effect of himself. And he become a worshipper to God. And when he become a worshipper to God, and he has the taqwa, or he has the God fearing or God consciousness, that all will reflect on the outside world, and the world will change, become a better place to live. That's just basically the outcome. And so we said that every nation has its own way. It depends on the time. It depends on the people. It depends on what is accessible, what is not accessible. But at the end of the day, the job is the outcome is the same. So لكل أمة جعلنا منسكنهم ناسكوه. For every nation we had the code of living. They have their own laws. فلا ينازعنك في الأمر. فلا ينازعنك في الأمر. So don't let them argue about it. Don't let them say, oh, why are we doing? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the early Meccans. Why they're telling the Prophet, oh, why we're not doing, or why you're telling us to do this like that, or this like that? Why it's not like those people? Why it's not like the Jews? Why it's not like this, like this? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, do not let them affect you. They don't really know much. وَادْعُ إِلَى رَبِّكَ. Invite people, call people for the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to establish La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى هُدًى مُسْتَقِيمٍ. You are indeed on a straightforward guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He established, remember, these, how the way the Muslims pray, the way Muslims do Hajj, for example, the way Muslims do their things is different than other religions like Christianity or Judaism or whatever. And from there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's saying that the people are arguing. The people are saying, why are you doing this way or this way? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows that these rituals will stay. Like we're, as Muslims, we do these rituals for the past 1400 years. But the originator, the point number one, or the start, was when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sent as a prophet, as a messenger. That's when we started this ritual. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the best, knows what can fit, these times. And until the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have put these rituals of Muslims as the most accurate and the correct way to worship God. وَإِنْ جَادَلُوكَ, indeed they will argue. And if they argue, فَقُلْ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. Don't go into more, try to, because the ignorance, a lot of times when you go into arguments with people, it just get ugly. And like I said, they get nasty. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you cannot argue, I mean, how you are, like somebody who never went to medical school, and somebody didn't study medicine, how we can go and argue with a surgeon? Some people do. Does the surgeon really need to stop and talk and argue and talk to them? He can say a few words here and there. If the person keep talking, replying back, the surgeon has to just stop the conversation, because it's useless. Because the person never have no idea about what he's saying, and he just talk. It's exactly the same thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, I know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying He knows what is the future. He knows what's going to happen. So if they start to argue, just leave them alone. Tell them, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows better. He knows the best. Just follow Him, because He knows. Allah يحكم بينكم يوم القيامة فيما كنتم فيه تختلفون. Indeed, Allah, He is the one who is the best judge. He is the one who judges between you guys, whatever you disagree with, whatever you have a conflict of opinion about, you dispute with. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who knows best, and He is the one who will judge the people regarding the differences or your differences. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking here about all the actions of the human being, all the actions of an individual, either public, in front of people, or in seclusion with himself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows all of them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the thing is, there is surveillance. Okay? Any business right now, even the streets of any big city, they're everything under surveillance, watching people 24/7. In order, if there is a crime, they capture that crime. And the same thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He have made angels. He have made within ourselves even mechanisms which is reporting to Him what we do, what we say. And in here, it's so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to tell us what? I mean, the one who's really, really, really stupid thief is the one who's gonna go and do an act where he steals some money from, for example, working for Walmart or working for Target, and he steals some money from a cash register in front of a camera. He knows that everything is recorded. Maybe the loss prevention guy is sitting in the office watching him. What kind of is this person really have any logic? And still people do it. Still people do it. So this is the same thing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's telling us, I see you. I know everything. Everything is recorded. Everything is under surveillance. So why you insisting on disobeying, committing sin, disrespecting me, disrespecting my prophets, fighting my people who are obedient to me, fighting my slaves who worship me? Why you insist? I see everything. I record everything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what kind of a stupidity is this? Because everything is recorded, the evidence is being collected. You can't take the evidence back. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows everything. Fi kitab, indeed in a book, a file. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, this is recorded. And then, so when we come back after death, Allah will recreate us, create us back, bring us back. Everybody will have his own CD. You show him his CD, what he did from the point when he was born until he died. Every action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, everything is in a file. Everybody has a file. في كتاب إن ذلك على الله يسير. Indeed, this is very easy for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do. Very easy for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accomplish. And it's, you see how it's easy for a nation, how it's easy for a store, department store. You have your file, you have the name, you have your address, you have the social security number, you have everything about you. And then within the job, you're registered. For example, you're working as a cashier, you're registered as under surveillance. In order if anything happens, they know. And it's easy for them because they have the way to do that. وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ سُلْطَانًا وَمَا لَيْسَ لَهُمْ بِهِ عِلْمٌ. And indeed, people, with all of what's happening, that they are under surveillance, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is recording everything, is still they acting stupid. Still, they're acting stupid. Go and worship a human. Isa alayhi salam, for example, they made him as a god. They made him as a son of God. You go, they're worshiping animals. Or believe that the animals have any kind of holiness. A cow, or go worship a false deity, or a statue, or doing things Allah never asks the people to do, or going after the graves, or going and beat themselves up, and they think this has anything to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, be aware. I know, I see, and you're doing things I never asked you to do. And you're under surveillance. You're acting stupid, basically. And everything you do, it will be held against you. That's basically it. This is what the reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. He have created life and death so He might test you. And He sees who will do good, who will do bad. And whoever does good, what's good? Good is what Allah asks him to do with this message of the Quran and the message of Muhammad alayhi salam. He will be saved. And who will act stupid, like we said, who does disobedience, who will call Muhammad alayhi salam names, he will call the Quran and Allah and the followers names and cursing them and all kind of mocking and verbal abuse or all that stuff, he will be sent to hell. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. So He said, يعبدون من دون الله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا وما ليس لهم به علم. They worship these deities. That's number one. Also, we have a big problem too. Worshipping the devil. Worshipping the desires. A person who keep his 70, 80 years, but he's just going to die maybe in 2, 3, 1 year or so. Still, he is not thinking about, how do I prepare for the final? How do I prepare for the meeting of Allah? No, he's keep working the way he is, accumulating money the way he is, and he's going to leave that money anyhow. We have a problem with worshiping celebrities. I see this celebrity does this haircut, dance, whatever. I worship, I do the same thing. We have a problem worshiping leaders who are asking the people to do wrong things. We have so many false deities we keep following, and these need to stop. If you want to see peace, if you want to see tranquility, if you want to see real connection between you and God, you have to evaluate who I'm following, what program, what's my software, what is the software which is operating inside me? Is it La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? Is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have says to do and not to do? What Muhammad alayhi salatu said to do or not to do? Or I follow myself. I follow what I believe. Who are you? Who are me? We're nothing. Just small earthquake, small another different coronavirus. We're done. So we have to understand. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِن نَصِيرٍ. Indeed, for those who will commit injustice. So by doing this, by following these false gods, false deities, false desires, false hopes, because a lot of people also hypocrisy problem. Oh, I pray, I say the only God worthy of worship. But in reality, when he get tested, in reality he fails. When somebody give him $100,000, $200,000, $1 million, here you go. Can you hold this for me for a year? The person goes after 1 year, he doesn't find the money. Or when the time comes and somebody asks him for help, he doesn't help. So Allah will test you. So hypocrisy also is a big problem, which humans or which we have to stop practicing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ. Those who commit injustices, there is nobody will make them victorious. All these injustices, following the devil, following these tyrants, following the false Messiah, or making Jesus God, or making Ram is God, or making this is God, or whatever you're making. All this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that those who are not going to help you, that those will not going to be able to benefit you. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one who is able and capable of making you victorious in this life and in the hereafter. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم.